Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to stand here for you again to tell about sustainable practices in Port of Rotterdam. Today I want to do this with an example, the new port expansion of Port of Rotterdam, Maasvlakte 2, a 2,000 hectare new port development which adds 1/5 to the port, so the port gets 1/5 larger. And I will tell you why it was needed and what were the principles of the planning and the design, which was sustainability was the main key, the key driver. And it's a pleasure to share it with you because during the project I was responsible for all the environmental studies, procedures, permits and stakeholders. So for such a project that was a fantastic experience. To be simple about the development, the Port of Rotterdam developed over the years and ages towards the west towards the sea, and that comes in handy. Ships become larger, you're closer to the deeper water, but it's more or less the only way to go for the Port of Rotterdam. The area in the Netherlands is scarce, and so we can only go towards the sea. But we are lucky to have enough sand in the sea, so we can use sand, material, minerals to make new land, and that's the tradition of the Dutch. So the Maasvlakte is the yellow part, which more or less closes the complete cycle. I think the next development will be to cooperate with other ports in the region or to build new ports in the world, in our world port network, Port of Rotterdam. The main reason for the new port development was the demand for space for containers. Containers is the most growing cargo in Port of Rotterdam, next to oil and ore and coal. But containers was booming, is still more or less booming. More is going into containers and amounts of cargo. There's still growth despite the crisis. The Port of Rotterdam still has growth numbers. And the space for containers was lacking. We could only accommodate the red part and not the yellow part, so we needed new port area to accommodate the yellow part. And that's the basic reason for the new development. But it was set up front. We are going to do it now with a double aim. We are not only going to strengthen the economy with a new port, but we are also going to improve the livability. It was more or less also to make up for all the things that had been lost in the past. Since the Second World War, port development was number one and the livability number two. But it was experienced that that's not the way to go. So an impulse to the livability was needed. And you can see it maybe as something that you have to do, but when you start thinking about it, livability is of course a key factor for port development. If people like to live and work there, it's good for your port, and again, good for your economy. So it certainly goes together. But it made the project up front more complex. We had a big assignment within the Port of Rotterdam in the existing area to use the space as efficient as we could and also improve the area with regard to livability. We have the yellow one, which is the new port development, the sand and the stones, the infrastructure, divided into two parts, which is this one, the land reclamation, and because it's in an area of nature conservation, we have to compensate the effects on nature, and close to an area of nature we compensate those effects as well. We make marine protection area and created new dunes to compensate for losses in existing dunes. And then we have the livability project, 750 hectares of nature and recreation close to where the people live, so close to the city of Rotterdam. This is an overview of all the included projects. which, oh, you can hear this thing. Yes. I turned it on instead of off. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry. This is the overview of all the projects, and you see in the city there are also projects, river parks, and projects to improve gray areas, to make them again green instead of areas that would be left by industry. And then there are the new dunes. Here's the new port development, and here's the protection site in the intertidal area. It looks very complex, but when you think about it, there is something in it for everybody, which makes it a project that has a lot of support, because everybody finds something that he likes, river parks or green areas and recreation areas. So in the end, when you look at it, you create value for many stakeholders. As I said, sustainability was upfront the key driver, and sustainability starts with the design, and then with the how you're going to fill it with which kind of industry, and the next one is how you're going to use it. What kind of requirements will you have to your ships and your trucks and your clients? So the key issues are there, that we try to have an integrated design to make it as smooth fitting into the coastal zone, following the forces of nature. So no new breakwaters, which were in the beginning the idea, but just use existing breakwaters, this one and this one. So not this. This was just a variant, an alternative in the beginning, and this is the new Maasvlakte, and as small as possible, so not including this area. Sustainable logistics, so that we try to influence the logistics. There is a lot of space on the water, and there is not so much space on the road. You need to build new roads, so it's very smart to use the water better. But how can you do that? So we contracted companies and we forced them to bring the goods on the water. Chemical clusters, that you can connect chemical industries for sustainable reasons. Multifunctional seawall, you can combine protection from the sea with creating renewable energy, windmills, and making nature, landscaping, recreation. Sustainability was a key driver for customer selection. They had to compete on sustainability, not only on price. And we have ambitious air quality measures. In a way, sustainability is something that you can see as a moving target. What we call today maybe sustainable may not be tomorrow, but it's more or less not having no environmental footprint or making it negative. And so do not lose any nature or do not add to emissions, and that's what was the aim in this project. The competition on sustainability here not shown that customers had to compete financial marketing, but also their offers had to be sustainable for the new terminals, and this resulted in that the terminal operator which was chosen had far-reaching goals with regard to sustainability. This is listing them all. But what happened, in fact, that they even went a step further. In their proposal, they talked about diesel, hybrid electric vehicles, but now the terminals are fully automated and fully electric. So they picked up the message and became even more sustainable. And who knows better what the state-of-the-art technology is than a terminal operator himself, not the port. So we now have 3 new customers already. We even had them before we started building, but that was part of the business case. You need to have the guarantee that you can earn your investments back. The model split is more or less here into 13, and then we want a model shift. We want to divert cargo to the water, from the trucks to the water. Although the trucks will increase, they will increase less. So we, in the end, only allowed 35% to go by road instead of almost 50 today, which is contracted with the terminal operators of the new terminals. And the port, of course, have to facilitate to make this possible. So we have a program on how to facilitate the barge traffic and barge service centers to help the terminals. We have this agreement on air quality because it was not allowed to add any emissions. So you have to compensate by reducing emissions somewhere. And the main thing is that we use is the third one, the environmental zone. So as soon as the Maasvlakte becomes operational, which will be by the end of this year, only clean trucks are allowed. And they may in the future years only be 7 years old, and that moves from year to year. So in 7 years you only have a new truck park, new trucks on the Maasvlakte. And because of this air quality constraint for the new port, that also holds for the existing port. So all the trucks that use this existing port, also from the start of using this one, have to be clean, and that compensates enough for the adding emissions here, reducing emissions there. But it has a plus because those clean trucks drive all through the port and through part of the Netherlands and Europe, so there's a plus for air quality because of this development. Then we have a lot of stakeholder issues. You can imagine for such a project, a huge project in the coastal zone, in a conservation site with no any air quality allowed to be deteriorated, losing nature, losing recreation facilities, fisheries. People were concerned about the ongoing sustainability, the compliance, controllability, grips for change. There were many legal issues on the local level, the state level, the European level. The regulations are continuously changing, so we said we don't want to be dependent on the legislation. We want to reduce risk, and we want to know our stakeholders, and we want to talk with our stakeholders to see how we can reduce the risk, when they can agree with our proposal. And so we made agreements with many parties that all the parties that we know that had stakes. The first one is just about vision and trust with all the including parties, including industry, and that was to check and balance all the agreed sustainability concepts. Then we have the sustainable foredelta, which is the intertidal area, where the nature and fisheries were at stake. But we decided we will balance the fisheries uses and nature in a sustainable way. And we have an agreement with Friends of the Earth, Milieudefensie, on air quality improvement, and even with the bird protection to make special areas for birds. And that one I think personally is the most complicated, because everybody wants cleaner air, but birds don't pay rent, so that will cost you some money in the port. But when you learn about it, it's a way to go with. Birds are flexible, and there's always space for birds if you do it well. These agreements didn't come in day one. You have to build up the agreement, you have to build up the understanding of each other's interests. So you can see this is the way it goes. First you have a lot of concerns and objections, and then you make the agreements which reduces the opposition. And in the end we could agree with everybody. So that's how this process went. It looks like reduction of risk. That was the main purpose, but when you look at it in the end, it's creating value together with all your stakeholders. Quick glance, bird eye view on the construction process. I will not go into that, but I can do it in the break. There's a reason behind doing it like this. It's magnificent. It's just the fastest way of constructing ever. Such a big site with 260 million cubic meters of sand. You can see how it went in just a few years. And here you see the new terminals being built, and they will be operational. And this is a close-up of one of the terminals of APM, and the other one is from Rotterdam World Gateway. It's just state-of-the-art technology, fully automated and fully electric. They have robotic battery change, so we're proud of that. And the next challenge is to get a bio-based cluster to Port of Rotterdam, linked to the existing chemical industry, and we are ready for it. We installed all the utilities, and we call it a plug-and-play area for chemical industry, but it has to be bio-based. We are moving towards non-fossil era, and we want this part of the port to be a front runner. We want to attract front runners in the Port of Rotterdam. That's the policy. They are prepared for the future, and this is what Maasvlakte 2 is for. Just a few remarks on the monitoring. The monitoring is very important. Monitoring not to control, but monitoring to learn for other projects. So we monitored fish and benthos, and turbidity as a driver for many effects on, in the end, ecology, underwater sound, and archaeology and paleontology. So we monitored along the Dutch coastline. Here again is the Port of Rotterdam, the new port expansion, and this is the part of the Dutch coastline where we had all these monitoring locations, and you can see more or less that we learned a lot about environment and about nature, that it's very dynamic, and that it's very hard to find any influence of this new port development, which in a way is good, and on the other hand also sometimes frustrating for the researcher, because you want to find effects, but that was difficult to find. This is and it's, I hope it was moving, but it's an impression of the silt monitoring. We use satellites, remote sensing, to monitor the turbidity, and satellites can only monitor when there are no clouds, and this should be a moving picture. Now there are evidently clouds, because normally when there is no clouds, you can have sediment concentration, and that tells you about the surface of the water. And then we model with Deltares, Delft 3D models, the complex relation between the surface and the underwater. But you can imagine that the surface is a mirror of what happens under the water. But you need to be able to learn what the relation is. So we use models to learn the relation. And then we, the other one please, yes. So then we use, when you can see that when there are no clouds, you have information, and you do data assimilation. So you improve your model with the real-time information. And then in the end, of course, you can get a perfect model, and then you only need your satellite information, and you know all about the sediment transport along the Dutch coast. So not only for our project, which we almost succeeded to do, and we're very far, and we spend a lot of money on it, but it's better to spend money and develop something like this than to doing all kinds of measurements. Okay, thank you very much. Can we go back to the original? No. Yeah. Then we measured underwater noise, because underwater noise is caused by the dredgers, and we have populations of seals and mammals in front of the coast. Porpoise, fish, we were asked to monitor the effects on those animals. So we monitored before the start of the project and during the start. The blue line is before, the red line is during, and then you don't see that many differences, and we were a little bit surprised, but it happened to be that there already is a lot of noise already under the water. And this is illustrating it. You can see the ship intensity to the Port of Rotterdam during 1 week. There's a lot of ship intensity, so a lot of ship noise under the water. And the dredging activity is only the yellow one, close to the Z, the reference station. So that's why that's why there is not so much difference, but we did research in depth, we modeled all the sources, and here you can see a number of dredgers. Sometimes we had 10 dredgers working during 1 day, bringing the sand, and these are mobile sound sources in the North Sea, and we modeled those sources, and then we stochastically had mammals swim through it in the model, and then you can determine the exposure of the mammals, if they get hearing disturbances or not. And the conclusion was there is enough space for them to go in between, and they will not be disturbed in a negative way by all these dredgers. So, and it added a lot to the science on how to measure and how to model underwater noise, which is an increasingly important issue in Europe, also with the Marine Strategy Directive, where the people are concerned about underwater noise. Then the last part is about archaeology and paleontology. The sand mining area is far offshore, about 10 kilometers. This is the Newport, this is the sand mining area. And once we start to dig 20 meters below, and when you're 18 meters further down, we found like a churchyard of mammoths of 100,000 years ago. And there we find all these artifacts, bones and teeth, and we started to collect them and to conserve them and to do research on the relation between the geological context of those fossils, and in the end we connected them to the project. Today even we have an archaeological app. If you walk on the beach and you find something, the app can tell you exactly where it comes from, and if it's a fossil and from how many years it's dated. So it's related to the public experience on the Maasvlakte, that you can be led back 100,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago to the old ages, and with this project. This is another example of this research. We did an archaeological research in the connection between the old existing and the Newport 20 meters water depth. We collected a lot of artifacts, and we found the most Western prehistoric settlement in the Netherlands there. It dates about 9,000 years back, and archaeologists are very excited about it, and it really is charming to have it, to add it to your project as a value. A lot of people think archaeology is a nuisance and a risk, but you can transform it into a value, and that's what we succeeded in, and that's beautiful to do. So the last one is the upscaling of what we all know, and this is that we think we learned a lot from Maasvlakte 2 with all the partners, and with all those partners, a number of them, we started an initiative to do a research proposal to get research money from the Dutch institutions. They have themes within the top theme Delta technology in the Netherlands, and they want sustainable construction and management and maintenance of assets. And we think we can develop something for ports, ports that are in harmony with region and nature and robust under external change, and that knowledge will be applicable worldwide. So we made this proposal together with all these partners. We work with 3 universities, Deltaris, and then we work with Boskalis, who was one of the contractors, Port of Rotterdam Authority, Royal Haskoning, and then we also APM Terminals, the one you saw in the picture. It's the biggest, one of the biggest terminal operators worldwide. They joined hands and they said, we want to do research, we want to do scientific research on sustainable ports, but then based on eco-ports principle. So we start with economy. And then you have things about governance, and you want sustainable deltas, and within sustainable deltas you want sustainable ports, and then you have issues on impacts on coastal zones, impact marine ecosystem, but on the other side you have the stakeholder participation and also your economics, and those are all part of the project. The idea is to start a design out of the ecosystem. Ecosystem is leading for the design, and the other pillar are the stakeholders, to create value for all the stakeholders. So we proposed this project for 1 million euros, 3 PhDs, 2 postdocs, but we still don't know if it will be granted, but we hope. And then we have a big chance to improve our knowledge and to bring this knowledge more in a scientific base and further to the world. Okay, thank you very much.